They have committed their crime, been convicted for their misdeeds, and imprisoned by the court to serve their penance. But some of these convicts, down the years, have had the audacity to snub the authorities and have escaped from jail. During the early 1700s, two men, thief John Sheppard, known as Honest Jack, and thief-taker Jonathan Wild, were each at opposite ends of the law. Inevitably, in 18th century London, each of their lives would become entwined, even though at times things were not quite as they seemed. Sheppard was born in London's Spitalfields in 1702, one of three children. Their father, who was a carpenter, died while Sheppard was young, and his sister died 2 years later. Unable to support her family without her husband's income, his mother sent him at the age of 6 to Mr. Garrett's school in Bishopsgate, which was little better than a workhouse, and he was treated badly as an apprentice chairmaker. When he was 10 years old, he went to work as a shop boy for William Kneebone, a draper with a shop on the Strand. Sheppard's mother had been working there since her husband's death. Kneebone taught him to read and write, and apprenticed him to a carpenter, Owen Wood, in Covent Garden, and by 1922 he was showing great promise as a carpenter. He was small in stature, standing around 5 foot 4 inches in height, but nonetheless was deceptively strong, and his sense of humour made him popular in local pubs. Having worked for 5 unblemished years of his apprenticeship, he then began to become involved with crime. Aged 20, one place he frequented was the Black Lion pub in Drury Lane, which was popular with apprentices. It was also popular with criminals, such as Joseph Blueskin Blake, a future partner in crime, and self-proclaimed thief-taker general Jonathan Wild, secretly the boss of a criminal gang, which operated across London, and later Sheppard's implacable enemy. He developed a preference for strong drink, as well as the affections of Elizabeth Lyon, a prostitute also known as Edgeworth Bess. Inevitably, his carpentry work suffered, and he fell out with his employer. With Lyon's encouragement, Sheppard began low-level criminal activity in order to augment his legitimate wages. His first recorded theft was in spring 1723, when he started shoplifting, stealing 2 silver spoons while on an errand for his employer. Sheppard's activities went undetected, and emboldened, he progressed to larger crimes, often stealing goods from the houses where he was working. He quit his job in the autumn, with less than 2 years of his apprenticeship left, although he continued to work from time to time as a carpenter. His activities still undiscovered, he progressed to burglary in the company of thieves in Jonathan Wild's gang. He moved in with Lyon, living as husband and wife in Parsons Green. When she was arrested and imprisoned at St Giles' Roundhouse, the local parish officer refused to let Sheppard visit, so he broke in and helped her to escape. His crime spree inevitably came to an end, and he was first arrested for a burglary that he committed with his brother Tom and his mistress Lyon in Clare Market during February 1724. Tom, who was also a carpenter, had already been convicted once for stealing tools from his employer the previous year. When he was arrested again, and afraid he would be hanged this time, he informed on his brother, and a warrant was issued for his arrest. Jonathan Wild had been fully aware of Sheppard's thefts, as he had fenced some stolen goods through one of Wild's men. He asked another of his gang, James Sykes, to challenge Sheppard to a game of skittles at the Redgate pub in 7 Dials. Sykes betrayed Sheppard to a Mr. Price, the local parish constable, in order to get the usual £40 reward, shared with Wilde, for giving information resulting in the conviction of a thief. The magistrate had Sheppard imprisoned overnight on the top floor of St Giles' Roundhouse, pending further questioning, but Sheppard managed to escape within 3 hours by breaking through the timber ceiling and lowering himself to the ground with a rope fashioned from bedclothes. Still wearing manacles, he casually joined the crowd that had been attracted by the sounds of his breaking out. He distracted their attention by pointing to the shadows on the roof and shouting that he could see the escapee, and then swiftly disappeared into the night. In May, Sheppard was arrested for a second time, caught in the act of pickpocketing in Leicester Square. He was detained overnight in St Anne's Roundhouse in Soho and visited the next day by Lyon. She was recognised as his associate and locked in the cell with him. The following morning, they both appeared in court, and the judge sent them both to the new prison in Clerkenwell. They escaped from their cell within a matter of days, and soon after, both had filed through their manacles. They removed a bar from the window and used their knotted bedclothes to descend to ground level. Finding themselves in the yard of the neighbouring Bridewell, they clambered over the 22-foot-high prison gate to freedom. This feat was widely publicised, not least because Sheppard was only a small man, and Lyon was a large, buxom woman. Sheppard's thieving abilities were admired by Wilde, who demanded that Sheppard give over his stolen goods for him to fence, and so take the greater profits. But Sheppard refused. He began to work with Joseph Blueskin Blake, and they burgled Sheppard's former employer, William Kneebone, on Sunday the 12th of July 1724. Wilde could not permit Sheppard to continue to operate outside his control, and began to seek his arrest. Unfortunately, his fence, William Field, was one of Wilde's men. Sheppard had a brief foray with Blueskin as highwaymen on the Hampstead Road towards the end of the month, and Field informed on Sheppard to Wilde, who believed Lyon would know Sheppard's whereabouts. He plied her with drinks at the brandy shop near Temple Bar, and she unwittingly betrayed her lover. As a consequence, Sheppard was arrested for the third time at Blueskin's mother's brandy shop in Rosemary Lane, east of the Tower of London, on the 23rd of July, by Wilde's henchman, Quilp Arnold. He was imprisoned in Newgate, pending his trial at the Old Bailey, where he was prosecuted on 3 charges of theft, but was acquitted on the first 2 due to lack of evidence. Kneebone, Wilde and Field gave evidence against him on the 3rd charge, the burglary of Kneebone's house. He was convicted on the 12th of August and sentenced to death. The warrant set the date for the execution as Friday the 4th of September. Before justice could be served, Sheppard escaped. He had been visited by Lyon and some other friends, who distracted the guards while he removed a bar in the window of the door of the cell, used when talking to visitors. His slight build enabled him to climb through the resulting gap, and he was smuggled out of Newgate in women's clothing that his visitors had brought him. He then disappeared into the night amongst the bustle of the city. By this time, Sheppard was a hero to some of the population, being a Cockney, non-violent, handsome, and seemingly able to escape punishments for his crimes at will. He spent a few days out of London to lay low, but was soon back in the city. He managed to evade capture by Wilde and his men before he was arrested again on the 9th of September by officers from Newgate and was summarily returned to the condemned cell. His fame had increased with each escape, and he was visited in prison by various people. His plans to escape were thwarted twice, when the guards found files and other tools in his cell. and he was transferred to a strongroom in a prison known as the Castle, put in leg irons, and chained to 2 metal staples in the floor to prevent further escape attempts. After arrogantly demonstrating to his warders that these measures were insufficient, by showing them how he could use a small nail to unlock the padlock at will, making light of his situation, he was secured more tightly and handcuffed. Meanwhile, his partner in crime, Blueskin Blake, was arrested by Wilde and his men on Friday the 9th of October, and Tom, his brother, was transported for robbery the following day. New court sessions began the next week, as Blueskin was tried with Field and Wilde, again giving evidence. Their accounts were not consistent that they gave at the trial, but Blueskin was convicted anyway. Enraged, Blueskin attacked Wilde in the courtroom, slashing his throat with a pocket knife and causing a general uproar. Wilde was lucky to survive, and his control of the criminal gang was weakened while he recuperated. Taking advantage of the disturbance which spread to Newgate Prison next door and continued into the night, Sheppard escaped for the 4th time. He unlocked his handcuffs and removed the chains. Still encumbered by his leg irons, he attempted to climb up a chimney, but his path was blocked by an iron bar set into the brickwork, which he removed and used it to break through the ceiling into the room above, which had last been used 7 years before to confine aristocratic Jacobite prisoners. Still wearing his leg irons, he then broke through 6 locked doors into the prison chapel, then onto the roof, 60 feet above the ground. He went back down to his cell to get a blanket, and then back to the roof of the prison, and used the blanket to reach the roof of an adjacent house. He broke in and went down the stairs and out into the street at around midnight, without disturbing the occupants. Escaping through the streets, Sheppard hid in a cowshed in Tottenham. Spotted by the barn's owner, Sheppard told him that he had escaped from prison, having been there for failing to provide for a non-existent son. His leg irons remained in place for several days, until he persuaded a passing shoemaker to accept the sum of 20 shillings to bring blacksmith's tools and help him remove the restraints, telling him the same tale. His manacles and leg irons were later recovered in the rooms of Kate Cook, one of Sheppard's mistresses. His final period of liberty lasted only 2 weeks. He disguised himself as a tramp and broke into a pawnbroker's shop in Drury Lane on the night of the 29th of October 1724, taking a black silk suit, a silver sword, rings, watches, a wig, and other items. He dressed himself as a dandy gentleman and used the proceeds to spend a day and evening on the tiles with 2 mistresses. He was arrested a final time in the early morning the following day. This time, Sheppard was placed in the middle stone room in the centre of Newgate, where he could be observed all of the time. He was also loaded with 300 pounds of iron weights. Such was his reputation, his jailers charged high society visitors 4 shillings to see him. Awaiting his impending execution, due to his popularity with the public, artist Sir James Thornhill, at the time the Royal Court painter, made a number of drawings of him in his cell. He is shown as shackled but defiant, appealing to a public captivated by his legend. The published engravings became a mass-market phenomenon, selling widely and cementing Sheppard's status as a folk hero and celebrity criminal, alongside ballads and plays. These images would go on to be iconic visual records of a criminal who became a media sensation in Georgian London. Several prominent people sent a petition to King George I, begging for his sentence of death to be commuted to transportation. Sheppard came before Mr. Justice Paris at the Court of King's Bench at Westminster Hall on the 10th of November, where he was offered the chance to have his sentence reduced by informing on his associates. but he resolutely refused the offer, and a previous death sentence was confirmed. The next day, Blueskin was hanged, and Sheppard was moved to the condemned cell, now that the predecessor had vacated. The next Monday, he was taken to the gallows at Tyburn to be hanged. He had planned one more escape, but his penknife, intended to cut the ropes binding him on the journey, was found by a prison warder shortly before he left prison for the last time. A raucous procession passed through the streets of London, with Sheppard's cart drawn along Holborn and Oxford Street, accompanied by a mounted city marshal and mounted soldiers. The occasion was as much as anything a celebration of Sheppard's life, attended by crowds of as many as 200,000 people, which was around a third of London's population. The procession halted at the City of Oxford Tavern on Oxford Street, where Sheppard drank a pint of beer. A carnival atmosphere pervaded Tyburn. His slight build, which had aided his previous prison escapes, caused him a slow death by strangulation from the hangman's noose. After dangling for the prescribed 15 minutes, his body was cut down. The crowd pressed forward to stop it from being removed, fearing it would be taken for dissection. But their actions inadvertently prevented Sheppard's friends from implementing a plan to take his body to a doctor in an attempt to revive him. His remains were later recovered and buried in the churchyard of St. Martin in the Fields, secretly that night.